right. So welcome back to another episode of Jesus for Mormons. And I am Kai Van Leuven. I spent over 30 years in the Mormon church. And this is my story of what I did after leaving.
And I'm Di Beals. I'm a pastor at Venture Church and your friend. And I'm along for another ride. Here we go. Right on.
All right, let's do it. So the title of this episode is Shame, Guilt, and Sin.
Oh, just a little light reading.
Yeah, keeping it fluffy. I wanted to talk a little bit about this shame and guilt, and really what people can experience inside of the church, what they can also experience after they leave, and how to kind of reconcile that, and really what it means. I have a friend growing up. He was kind of, I would say, kind of my hero. Me and him shared a lot of activities, and I looked up to him. He was a really great athlete. I kind of grew up idolizing this guy a little bit. He went on a mission. He got married in the temple. He did all of these things. Later in life, he ended up getting divorced from his wife. They had a kid together, and he had a problem. He had, he within the church, he had a problem. I think a lot of us would view his problem and maybe not be as harsh as the church was. But I remember getting home from my mission and watching the sacrament go around and watching it pass over him. And years later, me and him went out to dinner. He was a couple drinks in, and we were talking openly about him leaving the church. And he said, I tried so hard to be in it. I tried so hard to be just a full-on member of the church. I tried. And when I went to church, I felt so much shame. I felt so much guilt for being there and just never being worthy enough to be there. And so we kind of talked about that a little bit. And I don't know. I think about him, and I think about how hardcore he was for the church, and that he just felt so bad in those moments.
Sad, super sad.
I think it is really sad that there wasn't really an avenue for him. I would like to think that in a healthy church environment that he would be treated a lot differently.
Yeah.
That there wouldn't be all of that social pressure for change. That there would be, I don't know, that it would just be a lot more supportive of someone. And then after I left the church, me and a few, I'll go to anonymity here. Me and a few family members were sitting and talking about them leaving the church, and we're sitting there, and these are older women. These are not young people. Kind of unpacking 50 years of feeling shame and guilt for not believing in the church and not really being into it, and about how they kind of felt rejected by their own family, and that they had less worth than other members of their family. And
so their shame wasn't necessarily associated to their behavior in the church. It was that they weren't a part of the church.
That they weren't a part of it. And I think that's a really common thing for people who leave, right? Is that they feel like they've let down their family, maybe some of their friends and peers that they had within the church. They feel that they've failed them.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a lot of shame, in that respect. I'll talk about my personal story. After leaving the church, I still wore garments. And after totally not believing it at all, I still wore garments for months and months and months.
Oh, wow.
And just...
Yeah, why?
I don't know. And every time I took them off, I just felt like, I just feel so, I don't know, embarrassed. I don't even know what the right term is, but I've been wearing garments for 14 years or something. If I'm doing the math back, 13 years, 12 years. And I don't know. I just felt so bad about taking them off. which is funny because the church has a really hard time getting people to wear them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I just had a hard time taking them off and feeling like I was still okay with God, right? Or whatever, right? Like it's built into you so much that
Sure.
these are going to be a protection for you. These are going to be a shield from physical and spiritual, bad things that could happen to you, that I just felt like, I don't know if that's even almost superstitiously, I felt that I should wear them. I definitely felt like I let everyone down who had poured any time into me within the church. People give freely of their time and of their effort. And I felt like me walking away was like disrespectful to them or the wrong thing to do for them. So I definitely felt that. One day this really hit me. I'd always had these feelings, and I was in our shower at our house, and I remember just crying, just like pouring out. And I remember saying, Kai, you're a good guy. Talking to myself, right? Kai, you're a good guy. And so I don't want you, me talking to myself, I don't want you to feel shame or guilt for the rest of your life. And there was something like, I don't know, there's something freeing about me saying that to myself. Like I really started to kind of turn a corner on how I felt about myself, how I felt about like this decision that I had made to leave the church. And I didn't feel like I was letting anyone down after that experience, which was kind of a weird thing. But I was able to kind of release some of those things. And I honestly think that a lot of times when people leave the church, they also start to make decisions that are different than the way that they lived within the church. You see people starting to drink, right? You see, which Mormons, obviously, a lot of people don't drink. You see them start to, I don't know, look at pornography. Hey, there you go. We'll throw it out there. You see people it might get divorced. They might be in a relationship and then be very promiscuous, which I have a lot of friends that have told me about that. They tell me too much about that. So there's a lot of different things that people will do after they leave the church. And I guess what bothers me about that is that I've kind of dealt with this like shame and guilt. And I feel that people are just trying to really cope with those feelings that they have.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to give people a free pass. I mean, I know people who have totally left their families and 5 kids, and I definitely don't encourage that. But I will say that these people are trying to cope with a loss.
Yeah.
And whether it's misguided or not, I think that people should be really kind to someone who leaves the church. I think it's a really hard thing to do. What bothers me is this. It actually really pisses me off, if we're really being honest, is that people say, oh, that person left just so that they could sin, right? Like, that's the reason. I just, out of everyone I know, I've never met anyone that's the case.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do you think the person saying that, who is still in the church likely, is saying that because they're trying to understand, and that's the only good reason they can come up with? Because otherwise, what are you left with? That they're onto something here? That maybe there is some mistruth that I don't know about?
I think it's a way...
Is it a way to put this person down?
Yeah, at best, I think it's a superiority thing. Okay. Like, hey, I couldn't hack it. I can do it in life without sinning. You can't.
Boy.
Yeah, which I honestly feel that's how I perceive it, and that's how I've kind of always perceived it in the church. I'll tell you, dude, every person I've talked to who has made these, who has done, like, I've talked to somebody who's been very promiscuous over a long period of time. They do not say that was a good choice at all.
Of course.
I mean, I just hate to break this to you. If you're out there and you're thinking, hey, I'm going to go live this lifestyle, it's not good. it's terribly lonely. I mean, the people that I know who have done it, it's people are not looking to do that. They're looking to cope with losing
Yes.
a foundation
Yep.
that was in their life. And
Well, and even promiscuity is a form of medicating yourself or numbing the pain or attempting to. You know, I
Sure.
mean, that's alcohol or pornography or smoking weed, you know, whatever you might turn to, you're trying to shut out the gaping hole that's been ripped out of you.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, and I think that I guess I just see it as so like self-righteous that people say, "Oh, he's doing that just so that," and it's like everyone kind of knows that, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people know that that's a very short term and that it's not going to heal them,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just trying to feel something different than the pain that
Yeah.
maybe they've experienced in the church. And so I wrote down that they also do it out of curiosity, right? If you grew up in the church,
Yeah.
you never drank,
Yeah.
it's kind of socially acceptable. You might do that. And they want to explore, which I think is interesting. I'll tell you, I still haven't drank, which I'm kind of, I don't know. I ask all my friends who drink, "Hey, should I start?" And they all say no. But all my friends are kind of out of the, like, I have so many friends that I interact with that are, 2, 3, 4 years sober. Guys I went to high school with or whatever, who are just like, "Yeah, I gave it up." And so maybe I ask
The wrong people.
or the right, I don't know how you look at it, the right people. But yeah, so I think that a lot of people are trying to cope. I think, and you lose your whole foundation when you leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so where else are you going to kind of find
Right.
yourself? Where else are you going to find,
who are your people?
Who are your people? What does that look like? And so honestly, like I pray for those people that they will find something of substance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because like for me, okay, I'm going to talk about what mine is. I really started to become very angry after leaving the church, and I started to excessively use the F word, which I don't know, Di. Maybe some people might be like,
"You have not used it on me yet."
I have not used it on you. That's because Nuclear Kai has not come out. But but yes, I mean, and I think there's so much anger that's like built up inside of me that it just like, and I'm trying to stop because I think it's kind of beneath where I probably should be. But it is like, I'm so frustrated by this process. And I think that, and other things that maybe I won't talk about so much, but my wife has been like super patient with me. Like I've when I was going through this crisis, like I threw out every scenario in marriage, and my wife was just like, I'll be patient with you, Kai. I realize you're suffering. And she's just like, just patient and just, there for me. Like she wanted to be that foundation for me. And I really hope and pray that people have, a foundation outside of the church.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's like super important to say that. Maybe that's TMI here, Di. But I wanted you, like, as a pastor, with shame and guilt, like this must be something that you deal with. This must be something that people bring in. I mean, I've brought it into church here at this building. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, talk to me about maybe what your experience is with it, and from a theological perspective, what?
Sure. I don't want this to sound weird, but I have long felt like I have these marching orders of fighting shame. Shame, it makes me so mad, because if I can see that a person feels shame, if I can see shame on them, if I can recognize shame, I am so angry at what is being robbed from them by their need or their inability to be free from being in a dark place. And let me define what I mean by that. And let me just use the Mormon Church. I mean, you've told me enough about your study and research, so I'm learning along with what you're sharing and what our listeners are learning. And I there's so much of an irony, sad irony in a church that won't be honest about their past in order to overcome it and be better from it or heal from it or have a better future. And yet that's exactly what the people that are coming out are struggling with. Is there's so much shame for where you've come from. Everything that's in the dark is what keeps you in prison to shame. So the way I describe it to people is shame only holds you when it's kept in the darkness. So if you think about a child and they do something like tell a lie and they feel ashamed, it only holds them until they admit it. And I'm not trying to make like a doctrine out of this or a how-to book. I just, in my experience, when somebody is ashamed and they can say, look, this is what's holding me back. I'm angry, or I've given my life to something that wasn't true. And, all of the admissions of where you're really at and how you really feel, that release, that breaks the hold that it has on you of, I can't talk about this, that secretness, which is the Mormon church has got a lot of secrets. And so shame is perpetuated in that kind of an environment. It breeds in the secret and in the darkness. It can become such a hold on people. So what do I see? I see people who come into, because I work in a church, and they come into church and I know a God of love and forgiveness and restoration, and they walk in wearing this I'm not good enough shroud over them called shame. I'm not good enough. I failed too much. I said I was going to go to church, or I said I was going to be a good person, and I haven't done it, or I've made all these mistakes, or I've hurt people, or I've fallen short. I've disappointed everybody. I've disappointed myself. Whatever, the list is long. And so therefore I'm going to let myself live in the darkness and I'm going to stew on the mistakes or the ways I've been wronged even, which I don't think shame usually is attached to being wronged, but maybe your reaction to it. But it's usually very much, and I should just differentiate between guilt and shame. Guilt is, I did something wrong. I behaved badly or wrongly, and I feel bad for that. Shame is a whole nother level. That's where you turn inward. And I don't even deserve to be happy. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve to have a good job. I don't deserve to find a community of people who love me. I don't deserve a future. I don't deserve, because I bought into this in your situation or in anyone's situation. I don't deserve it. And so therefore I will hold tight to the wrong that I've done or whatever, because I don't deserve anything better than that. That pisses me off.
Oh dear, die.
That is
my language can't
because
rub off
that robs life. And I believe that Jesus came to bring us life. And he didn't wag his finger at people who made mistakes and say, how could you? Shame on you. You fell short again. He said things like, love doesn't keep record of wrongs. I mean, he came, the only people he wagged his finger at were people who were religious and shamed others.
Yeah, sure.
He came to bring hope and life and a future. And like, as someone who wants to see that in other people, I want to be part of that process. Like, how can I breathe life into somebody? How can I encourage them? Like, you got to let that go. You've beat the tar out of yourself and you're a bloody pulp on the floor. That, let it go. Like, there's restoration for you. There's just, even me saying those words, somebody out there is listening and thinking, wait, so there's hope? Sure. Yes, there's hope. There's hope. So theologically, I think the verse I go to the most is in Psalm 34. It says, those who look to God are radiant. Their faces are never covered in shame. That's a direct quote. Those who look to God. If you think about this between a father and a child, or a parent and a child, when a child does something wrong, who's the last person they want to look at? They never want to look their mom or their dad in the eyes. They look at the floor.
Yeah.
There's another verse in Psalms that says that God is the lifter of our heads. And I think those two things together are the most beautiful picture. That when we can't look at God because we're ashamed or we feel like we've fallen short, or we have fallen short because we have,
Yeah.
instead of God wagging his finger at us, he places his fingers under our chin to lift our eyes to look at him, while he reminds us, when you look at me, your face isn't covered in shame. And so we live in this place of shame is dark. It's a darkness. You live in this dark place until you allow yourself to look to the Lord and realize he's not shaming me or condemning me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like healing that comes in that, right?
Yeah, agree.
I just think there's a lot of healing that comes in that. Like if you really like think about what God is trying to do with us, it's the opposite of making people feel bad that they made a different decision. Right. Like it's and I'm not trying to be preachy. I don't think that, like, the God that I know now, that wouldn't say, Kai, you are such a blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
you've disappointed me and let me down. And
yeah, it's a totally different, I look at like, and I think in these choices that I made while I left the church, that maybe weren't so positive, I felt so much more guilt and shame inside the Mormon church than, I mean, I still have struggles. I still have things that I struggle with now that I don't feel as much guilt and shame. I guess I feel that I've released so many more things over to God. And I feel like our audience is, maybe there are people that don't believe.
Yeah.
And that's totally cool. And I hope that that's our audience. I hope that that's people who are looking and who want that like burden lifted from them.
Yeah.
Like church, the gospel, Jesus shouldn't be a burden. That shouldn't be something that adds guilt and shame, especially socially. It should be something that like lifts us up. And really, my hope for my friend is that if there was any amount of healing that could have happened to him, that would have been happening over guilt and shame in the church.
Yep.
Like him feeling that he was less than.
Yeah. Unworthy.
Yeah. Unworthy to be there. Like I honestly would hope that if he were in an environment where he could have any amount of help, that it would be in a church.
Yeah.
And that people would reach out to him, would put whatever that situation looked like, that they would be there for him. And totally opposite from, well, you're not able to do all of these social things. You're not able to pray in the church. You're not able to go to the temple. You're not able to do all of these things that he was excluded from. I honestly wish that would be the first person that people who, like, I knew he was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it could have been something where we were kind of lifting him up, as opposed to being like, oh, that's him. He's doing that.
Well, and look, I feel like this just needs to be said. At Venture Church,
sure,
I'd be foolish to not believe that there aren't people here every week who feel ashamed. I think the differentiation here is I don't want to be the one making them feel ashamed. I want to offer the hope that they don't have to live in shame. I think we feel shame because we turn inward, and someone has to be the hand that reaches out or the voice that reaches out and says, "This, you don't have to live this way. This is like, that's what we do when we're self-inflicting, we're turned inward." But I realize that people think church is going to remind me of all my shortcomings. And I just want to go on record as saying, I know that there are churches and religious systems that are out there that probably do. That is their MO, is you got to behave a certain way. I don't want to be part of that religious system. I want to be a part of Jesus's religious system where everyone is accepted, where a woman caught in adultery, brought naked before him, is not condemned. She's accepted as she is. That's what I want to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of healing in that. Like, I think there's a lot of healing for people that feel, guilt and shame for their, choices in life, even if those choices are good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They may, even if they leave the church like I did, I think that there can be some restoration that happens. That they can feel better about that choice and not carry around all of the guilt from their family. And I do think that we did this justice, this topic of
Hey,
go ahead.
Before we wrap it up, I think what struck me as you started talking is something I never considered, and that is the loneliness that comes with leaving the church, leaving the Mormon church.
Sure.
And then you add shame on top of it, and that just feels so despondent to me.
Mhm.
And so I think to anyone listening that feels super lonely, I really want to just throw my arms open and welcome people into community and a process. Like, we're all in process, and people are welcome to come to God, but also welcome to, I mean, at least at our church, I know not everyone that listens lives near us, but finding a community of people who will accept you in process is so much less lonely. That really struck me, the loneliness.
It is, especially if you're like me and a lot of people who grew up very heavy into it and didn't really look outside, of that. Like, your world is the church, like your belief systems and a lot of things within it are kind of, set out for you. And then you go outside of it. It's just a totally different world. And it is really lonely. I'm grateful I have my wife. But if I didn't, it's really just a really hard, outlook. And I really do have sympathy for people who go through that, who have gone through that. I look at my whole generation of people that I know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just feel so sad that, so many of us are leaving, and we're leaving in a really negative way where we carry a lot of stuff with us. And so anyways, I think we've done a good job with this subject and talked about it. And
people can email if they have questions or comments or are looking for some encouragement.
Yeah, people can definitely email us at jesusformormons@gmail.com. And I really would love for people to reach out, and we can continue on this journey of, leaving the church and different feelings that we have. If you have anything you want to put in the comments below, go ahead and put that, and we'll try to respond the best we can. And until next time.
Until next time.